All right, I'm starting with audience participation on this one. Can someone complete this quote for me? Together, all right. You've heard this quote a while, right? Like, we heard it ever since we were kids. It's supposed to be advice to, like, your mom gives you to be nice to other people. This is why you should get along. It's advice that, really is the reason companies exist, right? The reason more of us get together is we think there's much further to go along. The goal today is to maybe together challenge that a little bit, right? So there's this question, there was a survey sent out to a bunch of engineering managers. They were running teams of at least 100 people. And they were asked, if we double the size of your team, by the end of next year, how much more productive do you think you would be? So 100 people, by the end of the year, you get another 100 people. How productive do you think you'll be? What do you think they said? 0? 20%. Okay, any other answers? That's actually bang on. So the answer was actually 10%. So on average, they thought if they double the size of their team, they'd be 10% more productive. And I'd argue we're at a point here that we might actually be able to go further and faster alone. All right, it's always useful to get a pulse of the audience. And it's surprising to me, even at an AI conference, what some of you are going to say over here. How many people think AI is the most significant thing or technology in their lifetime? Ooh, not that many hands up. How many people think AI is overhyped? Okay, a few people. So I've been working, my name is Satyajeet. I've been working at Google for a really long time. I spent a bunch of time on search and YouTube, and what I say is, like, I worked on AI adjacent things for a large part of my career. I was a software engineer before that. But a couple of years ago, it became pretty clear to me, we are seeing possibly, in my mind, the most significant technological change of potentially ever. Right, and again, I'm old enough, I think a lot of people in this room are old enough to remember a time before the internet, before mobile phones, before cloud. I think this is as significant as all of those changes stacked together. Right, I think that's what we live in. Now, I think it's going to affect how we do everything, how we live our lives, how we work, what we build, medicine, life, like energy, all sorts of things. But I'm not going to talk about that today. I'm going to talk today about personal productivity and what we can do as people. And to start with, does anyone know who this quote is by? This is William Gibson. William Gibson is an author, and his basic claim is the future is generally here. It's just unevenly distributed. So you need to look in the places to see what might actually be happening and where we might be headed. And my goal over here is to inspire you to see what's actually possible, how much we can be dramatically more productive, dramatically more effective, much more impactful, potentially build billion-dollar businesses as one single person. How many people think that's doable or likely in the next 5 years? All right, I've got a couple of people are converts already, so like you guys are already here. All right, here's why I think most people don't put their hands up and don't believe this. As humans, we're really bad at understanding exponential curves. We're very good at linear curves. We see, like, okay, this is what happened last year. This is what's going to happen next year. But exponential curves are hard to understand, and right now that's what we're on. AI is proceeding from a technological viewpoint, even from an adoption viewpoint, at an exponential pace, and we're having trouble processing that. So let me sort of, again, this is a audience participation talk, so I'm going to have some of you shout out answers. I want you all to think about a business you've tried to start, an idea you've had at work, and something you wanted to do. What has stopped you from doing it? Money? Okay, what did you need the money for? Sorry? For scaling, all right. You needed the money for scaling. What else? Building the product. So you needed engineers, you needed like people to help you with that. What else? Paycheck. Money. You need VCs or money again. That's the same thing. What else? Selling. You needed someone to help you sell it, right? And either you didn't feel comfortable, it felt risky, something of that sort. Yeah. Customers, who are your customers? Who are you going to find them? Who actually needs this? What else? If you have your hand on at the back, I can't see it because of the light, so just shout it out.
Time.
Sorry? Time, all right? You have a full-time job, you've got a bunch of stuff going on. When are you going to do this? That is more or less, so there's a couple of surveys about what do you think would happen and why people stop themselves. It's roughly this sort of workaround, right? Risk, money, what do I build? Who do I build it with? Who else is in the market? I have to figure all this out. And my claim is those reasons are all true. They're all real. And my claim to you is right now, those reasons are less true than they have been before. Does that seem right to any of you? Does that seem true? All right, nodding heads. Excellent. I believe each of us should now feel incredibly empowered and much more capable. And there are a few things that have made this possible. Now, the other thing I'm going to go through a few examples and tools and things that I'm seeing today, but really, I want us to have this as a discussion, which is always risky with an audience this size, but we're going to try this. But the thing I want you all to keep in mind is we are going to get, the tools that you have access to today are the worst that you will have access to going forward. So every single week and month, you are going to have more powerful, more capable tools at your disposal, making you more powerful and more capable. AI has done a lot of things, and I think there's incredibly sort of powerful technology in every aspect of our lives. But I think the way I summarize the impact really is that it's democratized intelligence. And once you have intelligence democratized, you can start to scale it. This is a report that Stanford puts out every year. The latest one came out, I think, a few weeks ago. The straight line that you see is the human baseline, right? This is how good the average human is at something. The curves that you see are different things that sort of skills that you associate. So visual reasoning, multimodal understanding. There's a line in there about PhD level science questions. At this point, AI sort of crossed the human baseline on all of these measures, right? So this is intelligence democratized. Here's the better part. What is the cost of all of this? Democratization's fine, but you still have to pay for it. Here's how the costs have fallen. And by the way, this graph was from Jan 2025, so it's already out of date, right? So basically in this case, the cost of a GPT-4 level intelligence has fallen about 1,000x in 1.5 years. O3, which sort of is like an advanced reasoning model, 3 months, it's down 27x, 3 months, right? So we all are going to have this whatever level of intelligence in our pockets going forward. So I'm going to break down what it means to start a business or publish an idea. But I'm giving you some examples, right? Because I think it's more real this way. Now, these examples are before all of this stuff, right? So remember, I'm going to go through some examples. All of this happened about 2 or 3 years ago. This guy's name is David Bresler. He was on paternity leave in April 2022. He decided, hey, I've got this idea. I'm going to call it Formula Bot. Now, here's the thing. He didn't know how to code. So he used this tool called Bubble to put up a website. Has anyone used the tool or used the app over here? Do you like it?
I've only used it
a little bit. He's got 1 million users, makes over $2.5 million a year. Margins are 87%. Anyone follow this guy on Twitter? I didn't realize this is a scalable business. So his name is Peter Levels. He had this thing. So in 2016, he decided he was going to do this thing where he was going to do one startup every month. So in 2016, he did 12 startups in sort of over a year. Here's the thing that ever since the AI stuff happened, he's sort of supercharged it. So on his Twitter page, he's got a bunch of things and how much he makes every month, right? Roughly all his businesses together, it's about, I think they estimate about $3 million a year. And again, all of this is before all the sort of crazy scaling of intelligence that happened. This is Amit Agarwal. You don't have to do this on websites. This is purely based on workspace apps that he's made, over 10 million a year. Just, I think, 46 million installs. just various add-ons to Workspace, right? Again, all of these, one person doing things on the cells using tools. All right. Remember all those excuses we all heard? Didn't seem to matter for this particular use case. So what's changed? So we should acknowledge that this trend has sort of been happening for a while, right? So they've been dramatically more efficient companies happening for quite a bit. Does anyone know how many people were at Instagram when it got bought for like $1 billion? 21? 13, that's right. That's the number I had. 13 is right. So that is incredibly efficient, right? Even something like WhatsApp, I think, ran for a very long time on 50 people. Cursor, which is the first logo up there, I think does 100 million, and I think for a very long time had 20 people. Midjourney, 200 million in ARR, I think still 11, 12 people, if I'm not mistaken. Bolt went to 40 million in revenue in 4 months, right? And I think it was, again, 20-ish people. And I think there's something that this class of companies are doing that's different from a generation before. There's a recognition that you can be dramatically more efficient using tools like AI, but also sort of being very methodical about what's done in-house, what's done outside, what do you really need to do. And I think that's the part that I want to emphasize today. But I want to sort of stress that you can actually go even further. You can sort of push even beyond. And so let's go through all the things that we talked about that stop people from doing things. So what are all the parts of, what do you think you need to do to like build a product or a company? What are the various components? Shout some answers out. Idea, you need the idea, first thing. Yeah, what else? Customer discovery, what do people want? How do we find that out? What else? Sorry, what was that? Land? Plan, you need a plan. You need a plan, how are you going to execute it? Yep.
The customer is going to buy your product.
You need to find your customers and get it to them. What else? Marketing. Right, that's right. So roughly, all of you are right. Oops, the slide got sort of messed up. But you get the idea. Right? These are the components. You need ideas, then you need to build the thing, you need to grow the thing, you need to market it, you need to support it, right? These are roughly things that you need to do in order to like build, grow a business. Now let's talk about what's changed and what tools are available to you. How many people use ChatGPT as a brainstorming partner or an idea partner here? All right, how does it work for you? Does it work? Works pretty well. So this is, I thought this was a cute example. So this is kittens. There's a doctor, Brian, who lives in I want to say Colorado, who had this idea that, hey, I ski a lot. Wouldn't it be nice to have like a trail map when I'm skiing instead of these black gloves? Right, so he called these skins for mittens. Now, the problem was he was in Colorado, he was a doctor, he had no idea what it means to like start a business, how do I even manufacture these, what are the kind of dyes involved, how do I find the customers? So this was, again, a couple of years ago, ChatGPT was sort of becoming a bigger deal. He figured all of this out in his part-time. Again, this person was, someone said time over there. This person's an emergency room doctor in his day job. Right, so very little spare time. He figured out, it started with like, okay, how do I even start a business? What contracts do I need? So he used ChatGPT to generate like the lawyer contracts that he needed to sort of put out. And now this is, this is not the sort of super successful story in that like he still hasn't made a profit yet, but super business, and he's actually selling quite a bit. I would argue at this point, you have possibly the ultimate market analysis, data analysis, and comparative analysis tools available to you. I put a couple up here, ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, Perplexity. I sort of think of them, I tend to use these, I use Grok. I tend to think of them as like really, really smart friends. They're all sort of different, they all have different abilities. And you can sort of get different answers on each of them. But using them for things like, give me a sense of this market. Do people know what deep research is? Yeah, so with Gemini as well as ChatGPT, you have a thing called deep research, where it'll really produce like a full-on sort of business report for you. The sort of thing, a lot of people that sort of get reports from consulting firms will say like, okay, the thing that I used to pay tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars for, this spits out at me in minutes versus having to wait a long time. So you have these tools at your disposal now. So a couple of people here said, who's the customer? What are they doing? What is the competition? Right? These are things that literally I've seen friends who are entrepreneurs get frozen on for like months. Right? All of that barrier has been broken. Competitive analysis tool, even things like the trick for each of these things, I find, is not thinking of them as a tool, but thinking of them as a partner. Right? So the first time you use it, you get a response. And if you stop there, I find that is when you sort of hit a wall. The key is to say, all right, I found something, what's next? How do I have a dialogue with this tool? How do I go deeper? How do I sort of get little sort of nuggets of information that I may have missed? The other thing I think a lot of people don't realize is these are actually great simulators of human behavior. Right? So someone else, I think someone over here shouted something like, wait, who are the customers? What do they think of my product? Right? It turns out, there's been a bunch of studies about this. If you ask your favorite LLM, hey, this is my idea, what will this kind of person think? It's actually a pretty good simulator. Right? So there's a bunch of studies that actually show that on average, with the right prompting and some tweaking, you can actually get an LLM to respond at the same sort of fidelity as you would get in a survey panel. Right? So customer surveys and things of that sort, you can sort of short circuit that quite a bit on the way. But let's say you decide, let's say you're in like a B2B business, you really want that customer feedback. There are a bunch of tools that make it super easy for you. So the first one is listen.ai. It's, I think, just out of private beta now. They'll actually, you give them some requirements, they'll go conduct video interviews with people that, sort of, you set them a target, and they will sort of come back to you and summarize everything. Say, right, this is how many people I interviewed, this is what I came back with. The second link is, full disclosure, this is a friend of mine, it's a startup. It's called Joe, which is you basically, if you have a prototype, you give them the link to the prototype. There's also another tool that helps you generate the prototype, and it'll go sort of do user research for you. Say like, okay, yeah, this is what people think, this is what the idea is, this is how it works. Right? So again, at this point, user research, figuring out what customers need, what does the market look like, what are my risks, that SWOT analysis, all of these tools are at your fingertips now to actually go get done. So what's missing is sort of your desire and idea to push it. All right, anything else we need to do before we build the thing? Build the thing, all right. How many people have heard that, sort of coding is the thing that's going to be most replaced this year or is going to make the most progress? Yeah, everyone said this, I think for the last, if you work in ML, it's where a bunch of people are focusing attention, energy. I think Satya was here in the morning. I think yesterday he said something like 30% of code at Microsoft now is written by ML. I think there's similar stats at other companies. Dario Amodei, I think, has said in interviews that, he expects, by the end of the year, 90% of code might get written by AI. Irrespective of, I think different people have different timelines, but I think the thing to take away is we are at a point where you have tools that will actually build the thing for you, especially if you're technical. Any of these now have, there's the mythical 10x engineer who's 10 times as productive. Now everyone's a 10x engineer. The question is, can you get to 1,000x and as fast as possible? And all of these sort of language models are going to get dramatically better at sort of coding over the next year, because that's where a lot of the intent is. I have a now 11-year-old. Last year, when he was 10, he attended a summer camp. And for reasons I don't understand, he wanted to go to a Python camp. I think it was mainly peer pressure. And I was like, really? You're going to do a coding camp? They had Replit. I asked him, okay, just show me what you did. And it was, any engineers over here, people that have sort of been writing code for a while? Okay, so I started my career as an engineer. I was for a while. He started, I was like, what are the things you did? He's like, oh, I did a Hangman program. He showed it on Replit. He literally put into Replit, write me a Hangman program. And I was like, wait, like, what is this? Why didn't you spend, 50 minutes figuring out what flights to include, right? Like, it doesn't make sense. But I think this is programming now. And in his case, it was very clear. He understood what was happening. He understood how to change it. And I think he had that control. And I think this is where coding's headed. So in general, the thing I want to sort of put in all of your minds is this is no longer a thing that you need to spend years going to school for and like learning. This is something anyone in this room can do. And let's say you don't even own a code, right? And you want things like a website that links to payments and that's linked to Shopify. There are literally dozens and dozens of sort of services. There's Bubble, there's Lovable, there's Bolt. So this is an example. Someone online sort of gave instructions. I think the example I have, I'll put the slides up later online, which is, hey, I want a SaaS website. It needs to do these things. Can you please generate it? And he used 6 services to generate it and compared all of them. He's like, all right, these are the ones I like. This is the one I don't. All of you can do this now. So the idea of like, hey, I need engineers to figure out a website. I need to figure out sort of how it'll work. That excuse is gone. There's a bunch of services that let you do that. What else do you need for a website? Backend. Backend's taken care of. What else? Security. All right. Let's say security is taken care of, which, by the way, all of these do pretty well. Sorry? Payments, taken care of. Easier to get done. Images, copy, right? Like, it's not enough. The customers will come. But yeah, you need to write, right? Like, it needs to be well written. You need to have blog posts that sort of pull people. You need all sorts of things that will like make people want to come to your site. And sometimes people hit a wall, right? So sometimes I'll try to write sort of engaging copy and feel like I'm stuck for a while, right? Anyone use ChatGPT or Gemini to sort of write interesting emails, blog posts? How do they do? Good. And I think the reality is the more you tune it, so any of these services, Jasper, Copy.ai, which are tuned to like marketing messages, and let's say you have a particular style that sort of get tuned to you, makes it really easy to put really sort of interesting copy out on the net. Someone said images. I'll tell you a fun story. A friend of mine has a startup that basically took like sort of powered like food websites and grocery websites for a bunch of sort of major companies. Here's a fun fact that he told me. How many people sort of look at recipes online or like sort of look at the image and that makes a decision on that's your decision factor on should I make this thing? So here's the dirty little secret. Chances are that thing was never actually like real. So he basically said, like, look, a large part of what we did is we had food photographers, right? So they'd come, they set something up, take a photo. He's like, yeah, I haven't hired a food photographer in the last 2 years, right? So all these images are sort of generated by, pick one of these systems, or in his case, like a tuned private system, right? It's because, like, now these things have enough control and give you enough tooling. You can sort of create really high quality images that you need to sort of sell a lot of these things. And by the way, this is everything from, if you're writing an app, you need icons, you need sort of high quality imagery, you need logos. All of these things are now possible using these tools. All right, so someone said something. All right, questions, excellent. So you're saying you're not happy with the controllability of these, is that right? So, did you try it a year ago? Did you try it a year ago? All right. So I agree with you. Right? I can tell you that I did this thing where I was like, okay, let me write a story for my daughter and have it. So I said, I think I used ChatGPT, Gemini at the time. Write a poem for my 7-year-old, generate an image for each verse in the poem. It was pretty terrible a year ago. It's pretty great now. Right? And I can tell you in 6 months it'll be even better. Now, I think based on the system that you have, right? So I think Midjourney is hard. If you have a very specific thing in mind, it can be hard to conjure it. I think there are many more. So for example, Google has a system now called Whisk where you sort of give it an inspiration image and give it something else, and then it'll actually generate it. I have a few examples for you later that I think hopefully will change your mind on that. But let's come back to that. And you think video and audio might be good for your site? You didn't like video and audio either? Yeah. That I'll give you, right? So basically for everyone, what he said is like, video is really bad. And I do think that's true. I think the video sort of Rubicon has not been crossed. However, let me tell you what is possible, right? So what I have up there is Synthesia, HeyGen, and Descript. Do people know what Synthesia is? All right, so for those of you who don't, Synthesia basically is, one of the things you need a lot of is like, you need people explaining how to use your product, or like FAQs, or something of that sort, right? So Synthesia is like digital avatars, you put them up, you give them a script, it turns out they like sort of, and you'll have like this ready-made video for you. Let's say you have this problem of like, I have a video, but I want to go to 7 languages, right? So there are a bunch of services, HeyGen, 11 Labs, which will just translate these videos for you in any language that you want, right? And in fact, like at scale, like this is something I've seen a bunch of services do now. So suddenly your product, internationalization is a huge problem for a lot of products. Guess what? Audio, video, translations, done. Like it's not something you need to hire people for, think about, feel stuck about. And again, for each of these, quality gets better every single week and month. And now then there's the question of like marketing and growth. Do people know who this guy is? All right, who is he? That's right. So he's a comedian, entertainer. He also happens to run like an ad company, right? And so one of the things, one of my favorite examples comes from him, where he had an idea for an ad with Dhoni, right? And so he wrote the script, his writers came, and then the normal process after that would be to go call some storyboard writers. And then it would take about 3 weeks where they would write storyboards, make up some images, and then go pitch a client. He kind of said, okay, let me just wait a sec. Let's see how far we can push it with ChatGPT and DALL-E. And again, this was about 1.5 years ago. So they basically generated the thing, booked the meeting 2 days later, and they got the client. So the ad with Dhoni is like sort of online. I forget which client it was for. It did really, really well. And what he said is like, look, normally this would have taken me, I would have hired like 10 people, I would have hired like a storyboard writer. It would have taken me a while, it would take me at least 3 or 4 weeks before I went to the client. Here, we were ready almost instantly, right? So this is, again, like him and his writers were able to do this without sort of involving more people. Someone said this about images, right? So let's say, so this is actually a live tool. I just grabbed it from like the Google Ads tool. So this is the image. Like, let's say you just have a plain black image on the top. And you say, actually, this is not going to work. My ad copy is not going to go really well. What I really need is I needed to make it look more exotic. I need it to really work. You can sort of just give a prompt that says, like, actually, can you put it on like a stone? Can you make it look a little bit like this image? And generate it for me. All these images are generated. That's generally what will run with the ad copy. I want to make sure I stay on time. All right. For every single part of your funnel, right? So marketing is a lot of things, right? It's running ads, but it's also social, it's email, it's sort of finding the right thing to say on social media, it's sort of understanding your audience and tuning your messages. There are a bunch of different tools that have existed for a while that are now incorporating AI into it. So you could do the thing where you use your favorite LLM and sort of have it tuned to certain messages, but all of that is now coming into these tools that are, in some cases, very tuned to specific data, and then they'll let you do all of these things. And then there's the actual running of the business. There's a few different things that I'll talk about, but the example that sort of most comes to mind for me is from Klarna. Do people remember what sort of Klarna did? And so they did a fairly big blog post about this a while ago. Yeah, what did they do?
Because they wanted to get rid of Salesforce and what they do.
Yeah, that's right.
Do everything on
Yeah, so what they basically sort of said, hey, we're paying a lot for custom CRM, Salesforce, can we just do it ourselves? So they did that. The other thing they did before that is they said, oh, we have a bunch of customer support that comes in. Can we replace all of it with AI? You could be right. The number I had was 500, but yeah. So again, like this was 700 people that they said, okay, we're going to deploy somewhere else, right? And this is what, as we think about sort of customer support and sort of what it takes to run a business, all these tools now exist to sort of help you do that. So the thing I'm going to sort of suggest to each of you is that what is generally needed is a mindset shift, right? We sort of have this attitude of like, okay, now I need to go find people. I need to go someone to advise me on this. I need someone to go do this other thing for me. A friend of mine ran this at a lab at this large company, and he said, what I now tell everyone to think about is, imagine if you had 10,000 interns working for you, right? The first couple of days with these interns is going to be extremely frustrating because in some cases, you might not know how to do the job, so you'll have to figure it out with them. You'll have to train them. Initially, they'll be less efficient than you doing the job yourself, but eventually they'll figure it out, and eventually they'll sort of do the thing that you need them to do. And because there's 10,000 of them, you're going to be dramatically more efficient and get a lot more done. Now, the thing to keep in mind is all these interns that you have working for you are getting better every week, are getting more intelligent every week, are getting more capable every week. So if you sort of look ahead, you suddenly have, let's call it 10,000 PhD level experts in the subject that you need them to be an expert in, working for you, that you have now learned to train on the thing that you need them to train on. So, as you think about other people helping you, imagine you have this democratized sort of intelligence that's all tuned and working for you in this way. It's not an easy thing to do. It requires a mindset shift. Have people sort of heard of operator or Manus? A few people. So what these are, like the word, how many people have heard the word agents at this conference or otherwise? Yeah, this is the most overloaded word that you're going to hear, I think last year, this year, next year. But what it means all of a sudden is you have these programs acting on your behalf, and they can use tools like you do, right? So they can sort of start to do things like, if the thing you were doing was to sort of figure out a particular task was, going somewhere online, putting it in a spreadsheet, and then copying it somewhere else, and then writing an email based on that, which, by the way, is a large part of the day-to-day of a lot of these things. You can just tell it to do that, and it will do it. Now, the reality is, has anyone used any of these tools right now extensively? What's the success rate like, those of you who have used them? Yeah, I'd say like optimistic. Someone at the back had their hand. What was the success rate like for you? Yeah, so easy for document processing, repetitive work. Was it right all the time? Was it right every single time? Yeah, so roughly what I've heard is, in my experience, is like, if it gets to 50%, you're like feeling pretty good, right? Which again, it's where they are today. They're going to get better pretty fast. So you have to check their work. Like I said, it's interns. You have to check their work a bunch. Right now, the systems work with each other, but not perfectly. But they're getting there, and they're giving you dramatically more leverage than you had before. So there's this question about where does this all end, right? So suddenly, let's say you've sort of built all these agents. You're going to put structure on them. You're going to say, okay, I have a CFO agent that's controlling everyone that does finance. I have a marketing agent that does all of this stuff. I have all these other agents that work together to run this company, right? That I would have sort of had to hire a bunch of people. I'm sort of now just controlling the strings. There's this great post, if you guys listen to the Dwarkesh podcast, that he has up about what the future of companies look like. And he kind of says, imagine sort of one Uber agent, and that, as you as the leader of the company, as the CEO of the company, you're the Uber agent. Dwarkesh podcast. So his name is Dwarkesh Patel. He's a great podcast. I recommend the podcast, but he has this one particular post, I should have linked it, where he talks about what the future of corporations might look like. And I think that's one possibility. And the one way to think about it is, how do you sort of clone the right parts of yourself and get expertise to actually run all of this? I think I'm at time. So here's what I want you all to take away, which is, I basically want you to know, like, if you had an idea or a thing, the things that have held you back in the past, they're less true than ever before, right? You should feel more capable, more powerful. There is the hurdle of learning a whole bunch of new tools, but these tools are very accessible. They'll get easier to use and more capable every single week. So it's time to get started. The trend line is pretty clear, right? So someone will build a billion-dollar business as a solo entrepreneur, right? Like you can kind of see the lines coming, right? So there's this ratio when I think my first job out of school at a startup, the CEO had the rule like, oh, like for every employee, I need $1 million in revenue, right? Because like it was a very enterprise SaaS sort of construct. Those numbers are going to change dramatically over time, and I think it's going to go to $1 billion. And finally, I'd say like if you had this idea, the easiest thing to do is actually get started and try these things, and that sort of is what will give you the success and sort of the thing that has been holding you back and that's gnawing at you is actually now easy to sort of solve and make progress on. That's my talk. Yeah. Do I have time for questions? Can I take a couple? All right. Yeah.